Hi, welcome to this Excel tutorial video covering an introduction to macros and also touching a little bit on the developer menu. This video was recorded in February 2021 using Excel 365. A macro is a series of actions or steps that are recorded and saved so that they can be executed at any time without the need to go through all the steps again. So if you find yourself repeating the same actions over and over again, maybe formatting something or maybe putting a series of text or a header or something in, if you find yourself repeating those actions over and over again, then maybe you need to record a macro of those actions, and then all you need to do is execute the macro, and the macro will execute those steps for you. So I'm going to show you a few examples of how we create macros and how they can be useful. So on screen I've got some fields that have got text in yellow, red, green, purple, orange, blue, and what I want to do is I want to record a macro that will reformat the fields. So it's going to make a yellow background, red foreground, and bold in this case, say, and then we'll do a green background, purple foreground and italic, and we'll do an orange background, blue foreground, and underline. So I'll record a macro to do the format, and then I will apply the macro and it will reformat based on the steps that I've recorded. So let's get started. At the bottom left here in the status bar, we've got this little box here. If I hover over it, it says no macros are currently recording. Click to begin recording a macro. So let us do that. Actually, before I do that, it's important to make sure that before you start your macro, the cell you've got highlighted is the cell you want at the start of your macro. So like I said, a macro records every step that you take while it's recording. So if I started here and I want to reformat this cell, if I start here and I start my macro, my first step is to go to this cell to reformat it, and the macro will remember that step. So it's important to be in the right position before you start recording your macro. So I'm in the cell I want to be in. I'm going to start recording my macro. So the first thing that this little box pops up, and the first thing you need to do is give this macro a name. The name's got to be unique. By default, Excel will say, do you want to call it macro and then a number at the end, depending on what you've been doing. Not very handy as a name, so let us give it a more meaningful name. So we'll call this macro yellow, red, bold. Next, we've got this shortcut key option here. This is important. We're going to use this, so you give a macro a shortcut key so that you can press Control and the given key and it will run your macro. So let us give this a Control Y. Let's not worry about this store macro in step just now. Let's go to this bottom bit here. We can put a description. If our macro is quite complicated and there's a lot of steps to it, then we might want to put a description in there to say exactly what it's doing. However, these are pretty straightforward, so we won't bother. We'll just leave it at that. So click OK. Now I've clicked OK, the macro is running. If I go to the bottom here, you'll see it now says the macro is currently running. And when you're ready, you can click that to stop it. So the first thing I want to do, I'm in that cell. I want to make it a yellow background. I want to make it a red font, and I want to make it bold. And I'm going to go down here, and I'm going to stop recording. That's it, the macro is created. Nice and quick, nice and simple. And to prove it, if I go to here and I press Control Y, which is our shortcut key, it makes the cell yellow, red, and bold. Exactly what we wanted. So let's do another example here. Go down here, start the macro. Let's give it a title of green, purple, italic. Let's give it a shortcut key of Control G. Now in this cell, you can only put a single character. If I try to put maybe Control GP, you get that little bing. You can only put a single character in here. Also, these are unique. So if I try to put a Y in there and say I want to do Control Y, you get a message saying, hold on a minute, you've already got Control Y assigned to a different macro, which is true. So let's do Control G. Click OK. The macro is recording. I will come down here and make the background green. I will make the foreground purple, and I will make it italic, and I'll come down here and stop my macro. And let's just prove that that's worked. If I go to here and do Control G, it makes it green, purple, and italic. Perfect. If I go down here and I press Control Y, accidentally make it the wrong format, and then do Control G, you'll notice that the field is still bold. So all the macro is doing is following steps. I'd executed the wrong macro, it had made it yellow, red, and bold. I then executed another macro to make it green, purple, and italic. It doesn't undo the bold. It just does the green, purple, and italic. So I need to then manually get rid of that bold. Now let's go here and do the final one, the orange blue. We'll do orange, blue, underline, Control and O, and let's choose orange, blue, underline, and stop that macro. And then if we go here and do Control O, and then go here and do Control O, we can see that that's worked fine. Okay, so now we've created the macros, what happens if we want to rename it? Maybe we want to change the setup of the macro. We need to somehow find an area where it lists our macros so that we can amend them or delete them or whatever. The area where macros are stored is the developer tab here. Now, by default, when you have Excel installed, you don't see the developer tab. There's a lot in the developer tab. It's quite I don't know, if you don't know what you're doing, you can cause kind of havoc with the developer tab. So by default, it is hidden. In order to see the developer tab, if you go to File and go all the way down here to Options, if you go to Customize Ribbon, on the right hand side here, you will see that the developer is unticked. If you tick that and click OK, the developer tab will appear. And if we click on that, there's a lot going on in the developer tab. But what we're interested in is a couple of things. First of all, you've got this record macro button. So you don't have to use this button here. You could record a macro here. But what I want to show you is this macros section here. It opens up this macros box. This is where you can execute your macro. So I'm in this cell here. I'll execute my yellow, red, bold. I'll run it. There it is. Go back to my macros. Maybe I want to delete it. I don't want that one anymore, so I'll just delete it. It's gone. So this is the area where you maintain your macros. The final thing I want to show you, when you've recorded macros, if it's a standard Excel worksheet, the extension of the file name is going to be XLSX. When you record macros, it needs to be a different extension. So when you come to save this, if I go to File and Save, or rather File and Save, I should get a message. There you go. So this is saying it's a standard Excel worksheet, but you've recorded a macro. So what do you want to do? Do you want to save a file with these features? Then click No, which is what I want to do. So I'm going to click No, and I want to choose Save As. And when I choose Save As, I've got this option here to change the extension of. Hold on a second. Well, I could have done it there, but this is popped up. But if I click on this drop down here, when it catches up, you've got options here to change the extension of your workbook, and you need to do that. So it can't be SLSX, it's got to be XLSM for a macro enabled workbook. So I'll do that. You don't need to change the name, it'll automatically change that. Click Save. And then now it's happy. You've saved it. You can see at the top there the extension's changed. And it is now a macro enabled workbook as opposed to a standard Excel workbook. That's the end of this video. I hope you found it helpful.